wonder if her father gave her mother syphilis and the baby got the syphilis and her brain was messed up. And that's why she was so simple.
Wait, excuse me. You think Rue was
No, no,
simple?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
Verena,
oh, Verena.
the master, because the slave master had the syphilis having sex with all the enslaved
Like
women. He had
constantly
to
had
have
it.
sex with his wife in order to bear this child. I wonder if he off giving syphilis to these women that be dying, and Verena, slow-minded self, is actually she was born with congenital syphilis.
What? Okay. I don't here's the thing. I didn't think I I think Verena's simpledom was because she was bred that way. I don't think it's because she has a mental.
I don't know. The child was simple, like really simple.
Hey, y'all, and welcome back to the Books We Should Have Read podcast. My name is Ashley Ray, and I'm a writer and producer on a mission to get adults who typically aren't into reading through the exploration of Black literary classics. This pod is an extension to the BWSR Book Club, which is currently reading classics all about family and the ancestral realm. And you can find our complete book list for this collection at booksweshouldhaveread.com. Tune in each episode as I discuss a classic from the reading list with a member of my tribe, from what we love to what we hate about it, but ultimately rave about why each one is a book we all must read. Today we'll be talking about our first read in this collection, Conjure Women by Afia Atakora, welcoming my friend Morghan Boydston back to the pod. Now, let's let Morghan introduce this book and the main character, Rue.
I'm going to tell you what it's about in my words. In my words, this book is about a young woman who is learning her magic, generational magic that's passed down to her, and is learning how to own and how to manifest and how to like work within her magic as times are changing too, though. It's like it's a crossroads between old religion and new, in my mind, the way that I see it.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the toughest parts for me to get over because I was just like, where's all the magic? Why isn't she turning people into birds like her mom? Like, but then it was just like she's just trying to adapt to the times.
Yeah. I think Rue is like the new generation, um, the new budding generation on the plantation. That's how I see her. I see her as a young woman who was inherited this gift that I don't think she fully understands, or believes in. I think she doubts herself in her gift. I think she was in awe of her mother, and also there was parts of her mother that she didn't understand, so she couldn't fully hone her gift. I think in order to understand your gift and where it comes from, you in a lot of ways need to understand the person that passed that gift down. Like that's a lot of what like shadow work and ancestor veneration and all of that is about, so you get to know your people before you, so you can take their wisdoms with you as you move forward. I think she's a girl that was stolen from her in some ways, and the hard work of the plantation and keeping that up, she didn't really have time to understand and process. It's almost like she was thrown into it all. I think she's a very smart and innovative woman too. I think as much as, especially reading it the second time, as much as she tried to feel like, as much as lack of self-confidence she had, it also was very clear that you're maneuvering very well and you're picking this up with ease. So didn't really fully understand where her doubt was coming from, because it was clear that she had it. I think she was a naive woman wanting love and friendship. Um, yeah, I think she was angry in some ways too, bitter in some ways.
Yeah. I saw that too. I think maybe her self-doubt primarily came from the fact that like she no longer like she lost her mom, right? She lost a
Mhm.
person who was supposed to really make that transition like a lot smoother to her
Mhm.
becoming the miss.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um and like then coupled with the times changing so drastically, like I was thinking about this too the whole time, like how fucked up it is to like live your whole entire life on this plantation and then someone comes and tells you that you're free. What are you supposed to do? Conjure Women is a story about family and the suffocating grasp this particular community has on its old world as they begrudgingly walk into the new. It takes place along the southeastern coast of the United States, right before and after the Civil War completely uproots their lives. As Morghan noted, the book is mainly about Rue, the daughter of the plantation's former medicine woman, and how she fights to keep her community safe. Miss Maybelle, who is Rue's mother, dies just after the Union Army declares the folks on her master's plantation free. But while living, she also exposes Rue to the wonder that is holistic care and hoodoo, so that she would one day take her place. Rue sees her mother make the impossible possible throughout her entire life, from turning folks into birds and trees to curing diseases and witnessing the vengeance on the other end of her mother's hoodoo. Yeah, that's why I wrote in here my note about Miss Maybelle, though gifted. Yeah, Miss Maybelle, though gifted, seems to have ulterior motives. I said, keeping the slaves in line for the master in order to keep her immediate family safe. I don't trust her.
Why do you feel that way? That's as you were going. That's when you were reading it.
Yeah,
What was
when I
that
was
about?
first introduced to her, it just felt something about it just felt so like,
But what if Miss Maybelle? What if that is your wanting her to be everyone's saver, and that's really not the role she was playing? What if she was just purely doing her job as a slave, and her job was adulterated? Her magic, her power was twisted and turned, not according to how she would want it, but because she herself was a slave. So what if she wasn't there to give them peace and ease? What if she was just there to do that job to keep them alive? And in a
mm,
return, she needed to keep herself alive.
mm. And what if that was a genuine connection that she was trying to foster with them?
Or what if she was just trying to be a human to another human as they're both enslaved? Like everybody plays a role. And I think
Mm,
that it's really easy to make people look like they're villains for playing the role that's no choice of their own. She didn't choose to be bought and then bred. Let's not forget, she was bred to be the next medicine woman, too. So, like, to be bred into a role like that and then be blamed for playing the role that you were bred to play, like, she didn't have a lot of choice, and the choice she did have, she took. She did to
yeah.
let that turn that woman into a bird. Like,
Oof.
like, she did bind her daughter to this white, like, the choices she could have, she took when she could. But then there's all the other stuff, she was still a slave.
Yeah.
I think also on top of what's really interesting about her mom and her, Rue, is that they had a certain type of freedom that the other slaves didn't have. And I think it also had to been very confusing to be able to, in some ways, like her mom was powerful. I think similar as women today. How do you know when you're power when you get to use your power? Like when is it my turn to use my power versus when is it my turn to step down and step back?
Mm,
And Rue's mom was very powerful, but she could never fully use her power because then she'd be found out. And then she would be killed by the master or used in a way that she didn't want to be used. Like, bro, what's his name? Right? So, what's his name? Bro Abel.
bruh,
So, I
Abel,
think.
yeah.
So I think they were powerful beyond measure. And you would think that has freedom that comes with it. But even when they were freed, Rue was still captive to that power. She still
Mm,
had to play a role that she didn't really know how to play or want to play.
mm.
Her mom, I think, was the same way. I don't think she wanted to have to play this role. It was forced on her.
Bruh, Abel. What is there to say about this mysterious preacher man who wanders inside and out of this community freely? Well, for one, I definitely did not trust his ass upon first meeting, just as Rue didn't either. He's an interesting character whose main purpose in this book is to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, his offsprings, and maybe even some diseases too, but we'll get there later. He definitely carries some antagonist type of energy, as he's always around when big shit pops off on the plantation. So let me back up. Maybe Brett Abel ain't shit as I thought he was, but he's like real sketchy. Like he's but what I did appreciate about Brett Abel is that he never pretended to be something that he wasn't in my mind. Like he was just very real. Like, yeah, I'm a preacher, but I'm also an alcoholic. Like, you know what I mean? But I wanted to talk about the fact that Brett Abel fathered multiple children with Sarah, who was married to Jonah, who we find out
is a
does
eunuch.
not have a penis.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I want you to go. I'm passing the mic. Tell me your thoughts on all of it.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, and I haven't gotten around to researching that because I mean I did the first time I read it, and I didn't go in depth this time because I'm like I don't understand how he's functioning without this penis. Like there has to be when they say some, I just don't understand. But apparently, somewhere along the way, and maybe I'm just missing this detail because there's a lot of small details in this book that can get lost. But Jonah, for somehow they just say that Sarah and Jonah, when slavery was over, found each other, right? Or they decided it was them. And he was married, that is his woman, and every child that she births is his, though he don't got no penis to birth them. And so Sarah, whenever she wants to, she just gets it in as she wants to, and she comes home with children. And Jonah just accepts them as her own because they are. And so what we find out is that Brett Abel is the father of, I think he's the father of Bean too.
He is the father of Bean.
He's the father of Bean, and he's the father of her daughter,
Posey.
Mm-hmm.
But
the new one.
Right. How we find out that he's the father of Bean, that doesn't come until later.
Nah.
Like we're piecing together everything throughout this book. So Black Eyed Bean was born with like scaly skin, big ass eyes, and he just like had a spook about him. Like everybody was spooked out when they looked at this little kid and they didn't understand why. They just some people said that he had the sight, and other people said that
because he was born in the crawl with the basically he was born still in the sack.
Right, in the sack.
It's in his family line that they were born with scales. You know what I find so interesting about this? I didn't get it the first time either, but the second time was like, oh, this is why you got to read books more than once. Because the first time is just like watching a movie for the first time. It's like, oh, this is enjoying. The second time is actually to learn. But what I've realized or wondered, to the point, but we find out later in the book too, is that Miss April put a spell on that city that said no one could come in and out, right? As she's dying is the first time when Brett Abel is the first person to break her spell, to break her bind. Fast rewind from that, there was a point where she felt herself getting sick when she was spitting up the blood. And she put hung those apples up around. Now, I tried to do some research. I don't know if it's quite sure, but apples apparently were used, apples and nuts were used are still used as to divine, to figure out something, to get more deeply in understanding something. So I think she was trying to divine what was to come next. And she did mention, I'm trying to figure out what this evil is, right? So, but divining doesn't always mean evil. It just means you're doing a search, right? And so she was divining, and I think she divined Brett Abel coming. So he broke the spell of people being able to come in and out. And his coming in and out, what also is happening, if we put ourselves back in that time, is that you tend to mate it and had kids with the people that are around you. Kin became kin, became kin. He was the first new blood. He was the first new genes to come into this city, this plantation, this town, and for forever. So what they saw as magic and evil was really just a new gene being introduced into their gene pool that they hadn't experienced before. Those big pupils, I did the research, that is hereditary. Some kids, it's a hereditary it's not a disability, but it's an affliction. I can't remember. It's some fancy name, but it's also tied to like cataract. Like apparently kids that are born with that still to this day, it's a passed down hereditary disease, are also born with like cataracts that come with the big pupils, and you can get the surgery to get the eyesight fixed, but the pupils stay big. So this is him introducing this new gene into the gene pool without nobody knowing that it's him, because he broke the
Morghan,
spell and came into the city.
what the fuck? Yes, yes, yes. And the reason why they thought it was evil is because they had never seen it before. This doesn't
No,
exist in their world because their world is this
yes,
plantation.
yes. They had this own little, like she created, which is why when you say that Miss, why I'm like, my gut goes like when you say Miss Maybell's like, you don't trust her. It's like she was trying to keep all her people together. She had seen families and folks be torn apart, stripped of loved ones. What's her name? Mado.
Mado.
Mado, every single child she ever birthed was taken from her. That's why she was everybody's mother, because that is also a type of trauma and a type of psychological warfare, right? I'm gonna take your babies away, so somebody got to take care of these other ones, these errant ones. And there's gonna be a mother, a slave mother that dies, right? Who's gonna take care of her offspring? So you gotta have that one person that's the forever mom, right? Everybody got to play a role. And so they saw that trauma over and over again of people being ripped away. And what she said is, not here. I'm going to create a spell. Ain't nobody going to be ripped away from here. We might die here. We might get sick here, but we going to leave each other through that natural way, not this unnatural way of ripping us apart.
In the chapters entitled Ravishing, we're able to take a close look at everything that transpires during the spread of a mysterious and vicious disease, which claims the lives of so many children on this plantation. At this part in the book, Rue and Black-Eyed Bean, who's the son of Sarah, another important figure on the plantation, are the only ones who weren't gravely impacted by the disease, which understandably raises some eyebrows in the community. While trying to convince everyone that she isn't a vindictive witch and that Bean isn't the spawn of Satan, she does the unthinkable. Well, more like unthinkable to us, but the last resort to this new medicine woman. She slips Bean some temporary poison that's only supposed to give him the fever, but it ends up taking his life. Only for a moment, though. Only for a moment.
No, even as I do my own manifestation stuff, what I realized most recently before even starting this book, which is how I know, like, when it's your time to realize some shit, it's your time. The key to manifesting things is timing. It's not whether or not you will, it's when, right? And I think she missed that lesson, and that she rushed a lot of things in fear, not fully understanding that it could have gone some other ways. And I think also, to what we said before, I don't know if her mom taught her all the things that I wonder if her mom kind of knew that she was going to be the last medicine woman on that plantation in that way, so needed in some ways to prepare her for the next iteration of what medicine will look like, which is what we see at the end of the book.
Yeah, I felt like Root, she did exactly what I expected her to do, right? Like, to freak out. Like she was very young too. Like she just like freaked out, like, oh no, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna die. Bean's gonna die,
Bean's
and I
gonna
can't
die.
let that happen to him. So let me poison his ass to give him the scarlet fever, like the rest of these kids.
On top of, I think she needed to figure out a way to make herself be important too. Like if that wasn't her role, I think it was quickly that part of the role of the medicine woman on the plantation was both the spiritual and the physical healing of things, right? And so the physical things was always an iffy, right? There's always been right doctors. So while folks tended to trust, because the medicines that were used from the enslaved women were often, at least in my point of view, I don't know if the research of science says this, but they seem to be more effective and less like harmful on the body. The stuff that they would give, it would be preventative, right? I don't think even to this day, Western medicine doesn't focus on prevention. It
No.
focuses on what happens after the fact. And like she said, when old boy came to her when he was trying to see if his syphilis pox went away, he's like, they say they got a cure. She's like, yeah, it is a cure. The cure kill you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like they didn't have a good method of really understanding the best ways to like heal people. And so what I find really interesting is that Rue also didn't understand that, but also needed to figure out a way for her to be important,
Ooh.
because her role was shift. Bert Abel was the spiritual guy. So, and folks was believing in him and not her. And at one point they would do prayer. The prayer wasn't new. It's how they did prayer that was new, right? And who they had to pray through that was new. They believed in him more than they believed in what she learned and what they were guided with before. And the medicine was already drifting. So she had to be valuable. Because if I can't cure him, and if I can't prove that I have value here, they are going to kill me.
So she acted the way that she should have acted. I completely
Get it.
I get it completely. But had she had that like more training, more oversight from her mother, she would have waited it out. But it ended up working out in her favor, I guess.
I mean, in the end, or even if like she had said a different type of lie, like I think she was right. Her mom, part of magic is telling a little bit of a lie in order to make people believe something. Like, it's not a lie. Maybe not a lie is not a good word, but it's more so like giving a different explanation for the truth, like providing an answer for the truth that is also the truth, but maybe just not the one you want to hear, or the one telling multiple sides of
Yeah.
multiple truths to the same thing. And I just think about like, what if she had just said like, this disease will skip over some people and others, like there's some other way that she could have just figured out a way to like explain the sickness, and other than poisoning the poor child. The way she wrote this book, like everything was tied to something in real life, like the diseases that she cured. It's all tied to real stuff, but she never mentions it because they didn't know what they were called at the time either. So it's really interesting, like when I go back, like, oh, that's scarlet fever that everybody was dying from. In the time, they didn't know it was scarlet fever. There's no way they could have known it was scarlet fever. So it's like, oh, and I can go back. It was syphilis that the slave master had. It's like, oh, okay. And I love the way she wrote that. She wrote it as if we were there and we knew as much as what they knew. No more.
Yeah. That is so true. So I definitely knew that he had syphilis because that was like what I just thought of the way she described it.
Yeah.
But I did not put together that it was scarlet fever that they had.
I started counting back. I went to Google. I'm like, okay, when did slavery end? Okay, 2 years after that. And then that's how I was able to research what the disease was.
Because I had scarlet fever when I was a baby.
Really?
I was 6 months. My mom took me to the mall. I was 6 months old. My mom took me to the mall on Christmas Eve.
Uh-huh.
And I had scarlet fever. I got it probably being all around those people, and I had scarlet fever.
I didn't even know it was still around.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's what they are. That's what it was. Scarlet fever.
The silence that followed that last note of hers was filled up fast with keens and claps and folks borrowing bits of her song and humming it to themselves as they wiped in vain at their tumble of tears. Sarah had sat back down heavy, like her legs had been snatched from under her, and her man and her babies crowded around her in her swoon. Bruh Abel stood aside from them as though completing some biblical picture, but soon, without saying any more, he turned from them and made to leave. Rue took to her feet. "Wait, Bruh Abel, wait!" Wait for what? Her senses were far ahead of her mind. Her eyes had spied something her head hadn't even put to words yet. For there, in the little coffin, was a small stirring movement. A little white hand raised itself up, grabbing at the air as though falling and looking for something to catch onto. Rue ran over so fast she clattered past chairs and stools, tripped over her own anxious feet, but she landed at the head of Bean's coffin and grabbed onto the searching hand. With her other, she began tugging at the flowers, throwing them from around his stirring head, same as she plucked them from the dirt. She tossed them over her shoulder, not caring where the stems and leaves and heads landed or who they hit, not caring when one landed smack in Bruh Abel's face. He'd come to join her kneeling on the ground. Once the casket was cleared of its bouquet, she could feel for the little boy's neck, and yes, there was the slow but steady streaming thrum she'd been looking for, and the red oak casket below Bean opened wide his black eyes and looked around, blinking away the dust of death. Bruh Abel said, "I told him all it was a miracle." Rue nodded. It was.
When I think about it like this. They believed in magic. Christianity, especially then, it was magic. We now disassociate Christianity from magic, right? And even then, they're starting to learn the difference, or starting to accept, quote unquote, that there's a difference between Christianity and whatever religion that they were told was animalistic and heathenistic, right? But a lot of the things that they did in Christianity weren't unlike the things that they had used to been doing. It was an easy transition over. It was just a new person at the face of it. And so it isn't hard to believe in magic. Lazarus rose from the dead. Jesus rose from the dead. They believed it. So they wanted that miracle. So why wouldn't they believe that this baby who they thought was evil, and to them, death is while it can be a saving thing, it also is the worst thing, because where you going to after that, right? So for this baby who they thought was evil, for the worst thing to happen to him, which is death, come back, he's no longer evil anymore. He's been cured. He's gone to the other side and back new. That's what baptism is.
You're born again.
Yeah. So in their mind, it's like, he get a second chance. Really, they just gave him the same thing, that just a little bit of what Romeo and Juliet took when they were supposed to fake die. It's the exact same situation.
Yeah.
I also see it though as if we think about, Rue didn't want that job. She never wanted it. She wanted her mom's magic. She didn't want her own, right? I wonder if that was the way of ending that generation, what they thought was a generational curse. Like if that baby was born, then she would be forced to have to play that same role, and different role, new times, but it would be the same role. So I wonder if it was a sense of freedom.
Ooh, yes. I want to go back to what you just said about Rue wanting her mother's magic, but never really wanting her own. Like, because she's seen her mother's magic. You know what I mean? I've seen it work. I can trust in that, but I can't trust in the fact that I'm going to be able to conjure up those same things.
Yep.
So we've met Rue, Miss Maybelle, Bruh Abel, Black Eyed Bean, and Sarah. Well, briefly. Sarah is another interesting person in this community. She's a former slave, very fertile, with a slight vindictive streak. Oh, and she just so happens to be her master's daughter, which makes her Verena's sister. And then there's Verena, the master's daughter, and at this point of the book, the only living white person from the big house. Except she's dead now, but not really, and we'll get there later. Rue and Verena have a really strange relationship and extreme closeness throughout their lives here. but that can be explained.
Rue, being the mischievous child she is, just before her 7th birthday, finds a doll, but she finds the black side of what we find out to be a topsy-turvy doll that has a white side to it too. Though, because she's a little tink tink little baby, she was also a part of making this doll. She just didn't realize that the hair that she was being asked to collect was going to be for the other side of the doll. But that's fast forward, right? So she finds this doll in her mom's shelves that she's not supposed to be in and not supposed to be looking next to the poison she's not supposed to be touching. And she's like, oh my, I know I'm gonna get this doll. This doll is mine. And it's such a feeling like when you're a kid and you find something that you just know is for you. Like we've
Like a
all
Christmas
had that
gift.
experience.
Yes.
We have all had that experience. Like, oh, we about to get something. We about to get something for me. And it don't even need to be fancy. She's like, I don't even need it wrapped. Just give me my doll, right? And her mom sets her on an errand. What also is happening at the same time is her mom, Miss Maybelle, finds out that a war is a brewing and that the men are really excited about fighting for what is senselessness in the eyes of women, both Black and white alike. And this idea that Verena might need to be sent likely up north to a finishing school. So it also seems to be something that just happens in the South too, like your daughter might get sent off to finishing school at the same time as this war. At the time of this story, we don't know, but Rue was also promised to Verena. So Rue is not her mother's, which it has to be Miss Maybelle's, like, because one thing that is supposed to be solid in this relationship as a medicine woman is that you breed the next medicine woman. So the fact that the next little medicine woman is her daughter, and there's almost supposed to be some assuredness in that I am going to get to keep her, but to find out that no, actually, the one thing I could depend on outside of my magic, I can't. And I think Ms. Maybelle's power comes from her love of people. Like her power waned when her husband or her partner was killed, right? And I think she knew if her daughter was taken from her, then that would surely break her, right? So before it even got there, she binded her daughter to the white, who happened to be her daughter's quote unquote earner, the daughter of the slave master. She binded them both to that ground. So neither one of them could leave. And they were both, I don't even know this. It clearly, because at the end, we know that Verena does leave. So one could break the bind if they wanted to, but they're bounded together.
And Bean did that.
And right. They are bounded together as long as they maintain that bind. And so fast forward, still thinks that this doll is hers. And then in the most it's rude, it's just selfish. But Verena's birthday comes up and she gathers all the little girls around her that are her age, but are also those that are enslaved with her. And they have to play this role. And as she's opening her birthday gifts, they have to ooh and ah as she opens her presents. And the last gift, and Rue knows this gift is a doll, right? She knows that there was a doll made for Verena. She saw it and she took part in making the doll. What she didn't know is that the doll that she saw that was of her is the same doll that it was of Verena. And Verena opens it and she sees the one that she thought was hers. And then Verena turns it upside down and this green dress falls. And on the other side is her little black baby doll that she thought she was going to get. And she was heartbroken.
Verena says, look, it's a Negra.
Like happy about it, which I thought was so strange. Like the relationship between Black folks, enslaved folks back then, and white people is so interesting. Like I can be your mother and I can birth you and I can cook your meals, but you are subordinate to me. And I can play with you and enjoy you, but I own you. Like that, I just don't understand how the two can exist at the same. Well, they can't. Clearly, they don't exist at the same time.
like the Black people were seriously their pets,
Yes.
like their support animals.
Yes.
It's crazy though. But when she says, like, when I read how Verena said, "Look, it's a Negra," she was excited. Like
Yes.
she was like, "How comforting! This is
Yes.
so cool."
Yes.
It's so fucked up. Verena would never leave that place, and Rue wouldn't either. But they couldn't know that then. Couldn't know how well Miss Maybelle's Conjure would take. Today, Rue was 7 years old, because Verena was, and even that she couldn't know for sure. "How lovely," Verena said. She'd managed to work the box of her last gift open, and she pulled out the prize. Rue turned back around to see it emerge, though she knew already what it would be. The little red-headed doll baby her mama had fixed to conjure for Ma Doe to keep Verena tied to the land. Perched in her lap, it really was a perfect double of Verena, and Rue knew the girl would love it for that. "Well, ain't this darling?" Verena said, inspecting the doll. "Isn't it, darling?" Mrs. corrected. Verena ignored her mama. Instead, she turned the doll over and lifted up its skirt. And for a moment, stunned, Rue thought she meant to strip the baby nude right there, before her brothers and her daddy. But Verena flipped the doll baby on its head and pulled down the bright red dress over the white face. Sewn on the opposite side was another dress, a bold green one, as bright as the trees in springtime. And there, where the white doll's legs ought to have been, was another head. This one black, with fat red lips and brown eyes, and hair wild like bramble. "It's a topsy-turvy doll. How clever," Verena said. She hugged the black side close. "Look, a little Negra." Rue ached in secret, where only she could know. Was this the gift that Miss Maybelle had all along meant for Rue to receive? Not a present, but an emptiness where a present might be. Rue, at 7, realized then what she ought to have known all along, that she, and even her own doll baby, a thing made in her own image, would belong always to Miss Verena. So Rue walks into Sarah and Jonah's cabin.
Yes.
And she finds Bean playing with this doll. Was it ever said how Bean got the doll?
He used to follow her. He would follow Rue, like, as he got older. That's how I did know it was a little bit older. But if you remember, at one point, like, he would follow her out there, and he saw Verena. He didn't know that Verena, because he's young, and see, he don't know that she's not supposed to be there. But Verena gave him the doll.
That's how he got it.
And yeah, so because he looks like Verena saw him and was like, you look familiar to me. It's because Sarah is her sister.
Sarah is her motherfucking sister.
So Bean is her nephew.
But anyway, okay. She's playing with this damn doll. And she sees straw and stuff coming out the other end of the doll. And she looks, and he only has, I can't remember which half he has of the doll, but he only has one half of the doll. And so, like, that was Bean, in my mind, breaking
it. He broke the bond. Yeah.
Yeah, because they end up leaving. Okay. Oh man, that's what I'm talking about. It's shit like this within this book that I was just like, damn.
The magic is all in there. It's that old worldly magic. It's that pure magic. It's the direct consequences to actions magic.
Yeah. And even though I wanted more birds and more people as trees, this magic, it was very real. And it felt real.
Yeah.
Like her mom making these dolls. So the doll that Rue found was just a part of Verena's birthday gift. A topsy-turvy doll, one half Rue, one half Verena, to keep them binded together for life. But this isn't the only hoodoo doll that Miss Maybelle creates.
Aerie was the daughter of the previous cook. Though the previous cook couldn't really cook. She wasn't good. But like we talked about already, the roles that especially women played on these plantations were to be the forever mother to these white men, especially, right? And so I guess it was her aunt, though. It wasn't her mother, it was her aunt or some relation to her. But so the slave master had a nostalgic for that food, even though the food wasn't done, but he had bought Big Sylvia. And so for her cooking, because she was known, she spit out. No, that wasn't her. That was Ma. Okay, so yeah, so she was bought for her cooking because she was known for the good food. But that's nostalgia, almost like if you marry, when men get married to a wife, they might have some good cooking, but they always want their mama's cooking. That's what this situation was playing out, right?
Yeah.
And so Big Sylvia had been in the kitchen, but then she cut her hand one day and it just would not heal. And she knew somebody had put a root on her. Side note, what I was always confused about was who put the root on her? Like, who else there had the ability to do that? But whatever, but what it really means, what I also know is that anybody can do hoodoo. Just some people are experts at it and can master it. But hoodoo is about your connection to the earth and to your energy. It's a natural force. So if you have intent, you can do the shit. You just don't have much control over what you're doing. So she got her hand cut and it would not heal, and she was getting a fever, so it was likely infected. And so she went to Miss Maybelle and was like, somebody don't put a root on me. I can't do my job. All I'm doing is cooking. Now Aerie's in the kitchen cooking. She can't cook, and I know he gonna sell me because I was only here to do this job, and if I can't do this job, I'm gonna be sold or put out in the fields because I'm strong for that too, right? They also made it very clear that she was strong and she could work in the fields, but she was a good cook. And so she was trying to do everything she could not to be put. And so she went to Miss Maybelle and was like, Miss Maybelle, I need some help. Miss Maybelle was like, you sure you want some help? And she's like, I do, I'm sure. And what I loved was like, this was the first time we saw this relation, and it was very clear that Miss Maybelle was not the one doing these things to people. She just gave people the tools and the expertise on how they can get it done. And so they did. It's another situation. And we also didn't hear this first, we hear it later. But hair is like the root. It's like the foundation of who you are. It has your hereditary and your illness all in that mug. And so she told her to get a piece of her hair, and she made a doll. And what it was talked about, but Aerie has marks on her legs, what we now know to be vitiligo, likely. And when she put that, she just told her to scratch a little bit of the skin every now and then. And we don't know how much time she told Miss Sylvie to scratch a little bit of the Aerie doll every now and then. And it was hush hush, and Rue was sent away when this was done. Also, side note, what I realized that it seems to me the parts of the magic that Rue needed in order to conquer, like the expertise parts, she was too young to see. She was always shooed away at that part. So I wonder how much of a disadvantage she was by the time she got older, and if her mom, knowing that the war was coming, did that on purpose. But we'll maybe talk about that later. But so we don't know how much time went by, but what we do know is by the time we saw Aerie, what used to be a few marks on her legs was all over her body. And Aerie came to Miss Maybelle and was like, somebody done put a root on me. I already know who. I'm not even asking. And Miss Maybelle was like, I'm not doing this no more. We're not going back and forth with y'all. Y'all better settle this by yourselves. She's like, no, because I realized it don't even matter if this is settled. I'm still here. And the point of me doing that, to be in the kitchen, was because this existence in which I have is one that I cannot tolerate. So I don't want to get her back. I want to get free. And Miss Maybelle is like, I can't help you with that. But I can tell you to follow this river. And Aerie said, thank you. And so that's what Ari did. She followed the river. She didn't get far. She came right back. And this, to me, was like summed up so much of like what Black relationships between men and women, especially, like if that was the type of trauma that were inflicted on lovers, it's no wonder why Black men and women have such tenuous relationships now, to use that love against someone. Um, but when they brought Ari back, the master had her lover, who would be her husband, if she hadn't run away. And it's also important to note, she ran away because she knew that she loved that man. And one of the ways of them tying you to slavery is also for you to allow you to love someone and bear a child. And she knew that she was in jeopardy of that. Not only was she about to lose her place in the kitchen and she messed with some shit she should have never messed with, but then she also knew she was bound. She could not separate herself from her child if she were to have one, and she knew that. So she ran from her love and from having to be bonded to that land more than what she could bear, to be brought back, and for her love to be forced to whip her to the point where she was a shell of herself.
Mm. Mm. And then she ran again.
And then she flew. She ain't run that time.
That's right.
She flew. But the problem is, and I'm not even realizing this until right now, but if you think about it, before that spell was broken and folks could leave, anybody that tried to leave, horrible things happened. So Ari left when Ma Bell wasn't willing to break the spell on the land. She wasn't willing to let other people go. She just gave her a special little oomph in order to get free. But her freedom was at a price. Like, she was not supposed to be off that land, no matter how much Ari wanted to get away. That's why the first time she was drugged back and whipped. Second time she was found by the clan and still brought back. Like, until that spell was broken, she wasn't really free.
Oh my gosh, because she came. Yeah.
She kept coming back.
She
not
came
on her
back.
own volition. It wasn't, she didn't, like, you think she wanted to come back tarred and feathered? That was not.
Tarred and motherfucking feathered.
That was not her goal. That was not her goal. That spell is strong.
Because she felt like, even though she made it to the north, had a family of her own, she still felt super tied.
She needed
to
to come back
because of that fucking spell. And then tarred and feathered by when I tell you, finding out about the clan the way that we found out about the clan in this book spooked me the fuck out. Like, Verena sitting there, because she's still Verena in this.
She thinking she's seeing ghosts.
Or like, she think the war's still happening. The soldiers with the white hoods. The fuck?
Yep.
Picture this. You've been enslaved your whole life up until this point. Your mother, her mother, her mother, and her mother after that, and after that, all lived and saw the insides of their eyelids before this kind of freedom. You've just been told that you're free to go and live life as you please. But all you've ever known is this plantation. What do? Well, Rue devises a plan with Maldo, the school teacher, plantation mom, and another staple in the story, to keep everyone right here, secluded, away from white people for as long as possible.
The war happened. They were losing. Like we know in war times, places are pillaged and ransacked. There was a fear that their place would be pillaged and ransacked. And this is right at the tail end of Verena being raped and having a baby that was not a baby, but a baby all the same, right?
We'll get there too.
So Child was traumatized. And then the war is over, and then their house is ransacked and set on fire by Union soldiers. And Rue, because she's binded to her, but in her mind, that's her friend, right? I love her. I have to save her. Does save her, and puts her in the church. At that point was to save her from herself. her mom, Rue's mom, was still alive. Like, so Rue's mom knew that she was there and didn't agree. Like, girl, don't you hide that girl away over there, right? And then as time goes, it feels like it was a scheme that because also Mado, that's her baby. Verena was her baby too, right? So I think in the beginning it started off, we gotta save this woman who's gone through this horrible thing, right? The sin that's what, they took on the burden of that rape and that birth of that baby, as if it was their fault. And so they hit her knowing that she had gone insane and the child was already a simpleton to get go, so it wasn't far fetched. She was still going insane.
I was just about to say poor Verena, but no, keep going.
Well, tink tink. And so a while they kept her there, and then letters started coming in, and from her family in Boydston, which, isn't it really interesting? In my mind, I had always thought that people in the North, like the white people in the North, had always been good white people, like, right? I like to create this story that they're all abolitionists, right? And this actual was like the first time, like, oh no, you are the same family, you just happen to live in the North.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. Like,
yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So they kept writing letters trying to check on Verena, and when Mado, because she could read and write, and it also was interesting. This is when it came out that I didn't quite understand this up until now too, but it was a while after slavery started before they took away the right for slaves to be able to read and write, right? Up until that, they did freely teach them. And then they realized that they could not control them. And then it became illegal, but there were still ones that had learned, and you can't unlearn that, right?
Yeah.
And that really makes sense why we pass down this idea of education, especially in the Black community, where you're like, no one can take from you your education. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Why is that so important? Like, oh, because that was the proof. You could not take it. Once you got it, it was that. You can take everything else from me, but you can't take that. And at one point, you can be free again if you at least have that. So that's setting in with me too. But so she would get these letters, and because she's the one who taught Verena how to read and write, which is why they banned the education of the enslaved to begin with, Verena's handwriting was Mado's handwriting. So Mado was just answering letters because they realized that they also, it was almost like a continuation of the spell manifested that said that no one could leave that place that Miss Maybelle created, and that they wanted to keep the other white people out. They wanted to keep what they now knew their home as their home, because they all decided, well, majority of them decided to stay there and build this space together. And so in order to keep other white folks out, in order to keep people from taking the land, because Verena was still a woman, and so it's always the up chance that she could marry a white man and he might build there, but she would still have no control over that property. So they took
or really quick, the family up north would then send like an uncle down to run the plantation, which is now filled with happy-go-lucky sharecroppers.
Exactly. So in order to prevent all that, they took advantage, and like, she's slow. She always been slow. It's gonna take a minute for her to kind of knock out of this. And I think subconsciously what did end up happening in the end too, I think they also knew she was benign. Like, even if she does understand eventually what's happening, she ain't gonna turn on us. And so they kept the rules up until Mado started to feel guilty, which that is what I don't understand. I don't understand who her allegiance was.
Thank you kindly, Aunt, Mado said. Her wrinkled hand shook only slightly as she mimicked deft pen strokes in the air. Will say, your concern, as always, is a great comfort to me, but I am most happy here and intend to stay on as long as I am able. God willing, Rue added. Over some 18 months of deception, Rue and Mado had sent such fantastic tales up north, they had a quilt's worth of stories about Miss Verena. To respond to the northern relation, they'd given Verena Christian faith and a penchant for acts of charity. They'd given her a keen knowledge of the harvest on her profitable property. They'd invented for her good white neighbors and the earnest interests of a fitting suitor, a kindly widower who was winningly cautious in his courtship, and finally, a husband so that Verina's aunt might believe there was a good Christian man to manage Miss Verina's property and her prosperity. This loving northern auntie had not once met the southern relation she wrote to, didn't know the willful child or the sick woman Verina had grown up to become. It was easy for Rue to dictate a Verina of invention, and easier still for Ma Doe to sign Verina's name. After all, Verina had learned her penmanship by tracing her black nurse's hand. "Are we wrong for carrying on this deception, Miss Rue?" Ma Doe asked. She was looking out the window, watching the folks out there enraptured in their praying. The sunlight played tricks on her face, showed wrinkles like valleys.
She is the lukewarm person that I don't like. It's like you are walking around with this what do they call, the satchel on you to keep the spirits away, and participating in this spell, while at the same time saying that Rue is killing all the babies and that she can't rightfully stand up for her. Like, she makes no sense to me.
Yeah, like you straddle the line a little bit too much for me, girl. I'm gonna need you to pick a side. Pick a side, pick a side, pick a side. So,
Yeah.
yeah, same. But it's just like that scheme was so brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. It was beautiful. And I was just like, absolutely.
Yeah. See, one of the bigger themes that I've been sitting with this book is, again, where Black ancestral medicine and magic and spirituality meets this new westernized Christianity and medicine, and that there would normally be an apprentice or something, right? But because it was so quickly, like, slavery ended, her mom died. It was only like a year or so in between her mom dying and Burr Abel showing up, right? They'd had some time having a little bit of freedom. Like, she spent a year dying, right?
Yeah.
So there was no time for Rue to bring on someone to understand her. And when there could have been that window, they had already started transitioning to this very structured idea of Christianity and a man being the one that leads their spiritual guidance, which in the end means a man is the one that leads your healing, your physical healing too, right? It was really transitioning from women being those guides to men. And so I think this is also a sign of, like, what happens when you lose that tradition, when you lose your heritage, because she didn't have the opportunity for anyone to apprentice, to be her helper. She never should have done it alone. Her mother didn't do it alone because her mother always had her, and she always had her mother, right? So I think what would have ideally happened is she would have had somebody that she could have helped her take it through, but it switched, and now
so much was happening. She got robbed of that, just like she got robbed of her baby. That's crazy. Did you peep that? Yes, Rue gets pregnant by Bruh Abel and has a wild ass experience resulting in the loss of her baby. But we can't get into that right now because we're out of time. Let me know if you guys want a part 2 to this episode. There's still so much to talk about, but now it's time to get into why Morghan thinks that everyone should read this book.
I think people should read it because I love this idea of Black magic, and not Black magic as an evil. I mean, Black diaspora magic, and how it intersects and interweaves with Christianity, and how in the process we lost some things and we gained other things. And this is literally, to me, a story written about those crossroads. Like, even if you just stepped back out, like, each of the characters symbolized either this ancestral spiritual magic, or they represented Christianity to me. Um, and that's just an idea that I wrestle with often because and being enslaved and Christianity being given to us, while it has been a tool of freedom in some ways, in other ways, it stripped us of our
Mm.
ability to really be attached to the earth and attached to the energy and attached to our own internal magic that isn't given to you by some man preaching in a pulpit, right? It's
Oof.
based on you and your grounding in it. And we've lost some of that. We lost the ability to be able to discern between when this is somebody else's thing for me versus when this is the thing that's meant for me, you know?
Yeah.
And I think this is a conversation between those two things so it's worth reading for that.
Seriously, if you haven't listened to the Beloved episode yet, go ahead and check it out along with the first season now. You can follow Morghan at MorgieM on Instagram. Follow Books We Should Have Read on Instagram at Books We Should Have Read and Twitter at BooksWSR to stay up to date with the latest BWSR happenings. And if you're interested in being a part of the official book club discussion, be sure to join our private Facebook page, which is linked on our website and social media accounts. Sign up for our newsletter to get exclusive BWSR info, get hip to new and upcoming Black authors, and to enter our monthly raffle for a $50 gift certificate to a Black-owned bookstore. This pod was produced and edited by me, Ashley Reynolds, with additional sound effects and mixing by Soundrave. The dope-ass track you hear in the background was produced by Ty.2o. That's at ty.2 and W-O on Instagram. If you like what you heard and want to support this Black woman-owned and operated business financially, there is an Anchor link in the show notes where you can do just that. Any and everything is welcomed and appreciated. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, bye y'all.